Well, you're looking at someone who voted against the Family Medical Leave Act, which was an unpaid leave act. And my concern then is really the same concern I have now with respect to paid family leave. And that is, anytime we affect the ecology of whether it's the business world or whether it's the family, we need to, I believe, act cautiously and deliberately. The economic viability of this country, particularly with small businesses, is a critical and important element of the success of our country, as I would argue is the American family. And so you have to make sure when you wade into these things, you wade into them in a way that is not disruptive, that can be handled. And so my concern back then was that I wasn't sure that would be the case. Obviously, the business community has been able to adapt. But as we see, and one of the reasons we're talking about paid family leave, the people that really were the focal point of the Unpaid Leave Act have not really been helped by the Unpaid Leave Act. And it's because most of the people that we're talking about now and having with paid leave, the reason we're having paid leave is because that the current system isn't working for lower income workers. And those are the folks who disproportionately were the reason for the Unpaid Leave Act in the first place. Because if you're a higher valued, higher paid worker, leave is not as big of an issue. I mean, it's a lot more, your employer's a lot more flexible with valued, higher paid and valued employees. And unfortunately, that is not necessarily borne out to be the case. So I too want to make sure that we help those families because, as I said before, I think the family situation in America and its impact on children has gotten more and more dire over the last 20 years, and I think the trajectory is not positive. And so we have to begin to address that in some material way. But I don't want to jump in and do something that could be cataclysmically negative for another important sector of our economy, of our country, which is, the economy and particularly small businesses and its impact on that. So those are the kind of balancing acts that I tried to in my own mind go through here, and the important part for me was to focus in on the area that was the jurisdiction of this panel, as well as what I think the greatest need, which is helping parents who adopt or have foster care kids coming into their home, and making sure that there's sufficient time for them, as we've seen all the studies, for them to be able to bond and form healthy relationships with their children, which is foundational. I think the evidence is overwhelming, and that we need to do things to support that.
This is a remarkable change, because it used to be when you talked about family leave, it was gentlemen, ladies, go to your corners and come out slugging. This is a conversation as opposed to a battle, and it allows you to have much more depth in the discussion than you would have just slugging it out to see who can get the majority vote to either kill it or pass it, and then you live with a program that has split support, and you change personalities in offices, and all of a sudden the family leave program crashes to the ground. That's the difference. What we've tried to do here, I think, is just what Rick just said about his previous concerns, his opposition, and now here. That's a much different process than we may be witnessing elsewhere.
So do you think that the conversation that you're having, what's happening right here, can be replicated in Congress to actually get something done?
Being optimistic like we are?
Look, you have a situation where you have obviously President Trump and Ivanka, who have been very out front on this, and I think that certainly has changed the dynamic. Candidly, I think it's an issue that, if it's going to be successful, has to be embraced by folks like me, and folks like me who are, sort of seen more as, I wrote a book, as Julie mentioned, 12 years ago, called "It Takes a Family." I've always been concerned about families. I think they're the building block. They are the central building block of any healthy civilization. and our families are really struggling right now. And the book is more relevant today than it was 12 years ago. And I think folks like me who are Republican conservatives who are concerned about the family need to start thinking a little differently about the remediation the family needs. Now, I'm not suggesting that, and I don't think conservatives should suggest that the government is the answer to those problems, but it can't sit on the sidelines and just cheerlead for other things to happen in our culture to remediate that when all the societal trends are going the other way. That we have to speak out and do so in a public policy way that hopefully can begin to shift that debate. And that's what I'm attempting to do today.
One of